Good morning, organizational behavior. This is Diana Block. I'm your online instructor, and this is the fall 2014 quarter for organizational behavior. And I want to talk a little bit today about your assignments and requirements for week 2. And in week 2, we're going to read chapters 3 and 4, and then we're going to have discussion and complete an assignment related to those chapters. So in chapter 3, we're going to talk about decision making, excuse me, decision making styles, decision making strategies, and different information about decision making. And so decision making is something that we all do on a regular daily basis without really even thinking about it. But there is an actual process to how we go about making decisions. And each of us makes decisions in different ways and with different focus. In chapter 3, you're going to read about the rational economic model. And in the rational economic model, what it is we assume that when people make decisions, they have complete and perfect information and that they're able to process the information accurately and without any bias. So that would be the rational economic model. That's kind of a perfect case scenario. You have all the information you need and you're going to process it fairly, without bias, and accurately. So in reality, that doesn't always happen. And so that's why we have what we call the bounded rationality theory. And you're going to read that that is the idea that our rationality is constrained, or it's bounded by various factors. So we may not have full information. We may not be able to understand the complexity of each situation. There may be time pressures. So there's things that will prevent us from reaching that perfect scenario where we have all the information we need and are able to accurately process it without bias. Bounded rationality means there's some sort of limitations on that. And so as you continue in chapter 3, we will talk more about different types of decision making concerns. Your discussion for this week actually asks about your decision making style. Let's take a look at that real quick. Your decision making preference. And it's asking you to complete table 3-2 in your textbook. And so when you complete that, it is going to give you an idea of your decision style inventory. And it's going to divide most of us into 4 different categories, either the directive style, analytical style, conceptual, or behavioral style. Now, it explains in chapter 3 what each of these means, but in short, the analytical style means you solve problems through analysis, planning, and forecasting. That's your preferred method of solving problems. Conceptual means that you solve problems by exploring new options, forming new strategies, being creative, taking risks. So that's a conceptual decision maker. A directive decision maker, as it sounds, solve problems through operational objectives. They use a systematic and efficient way to solve problems through the operational objectives of the organization. And then a behavioral decision maker solves problems through people. So they kind of use a collective method to solve problems. So when you complete the decision style inventory on page 69, it'll ask you a series of 20 questions about yourself and how you prefer to make decisions, and it will be able to rank you on each of those 4 decision making styles. Now, a lot of people have a tie score where they have actually their scores are split between 2 different decision style inventories. Mine is that way. I scored a 62 in both directive and analytical, and pretty low 39s in both conceptual and behavioral. So I definitely am that person who uses operational objectives as well as analysis, problem solving, and forecasting. So you'll be able to complete this about yourself and see if you agree with your results, what you think of your results, how they relate to previous work that you've done and decision making issues that you've had, do you think you've applied this particular style? So when we go on to the assignment that is for chapter or week 2, the part of the assignment that relates to chapter 3 is an article at the end of chapter 3 on Google. And so after you've read all through chapter 3 and learned all about decision making, you're going to read this short article about Google and answer a couple of questions. So the article's on page 84. And then at the end, it asks question number 1, describe the decision making at Google. Now, when it says describe the decision making at Google, it wants you to go back through everything you've read in chapter 3, where you've learned about bounded rationality, convergent thinking, decision making styles, risk propensity, um, divergent thinking, program decisions. All of this you will have read in chapter 3 about decision making. This is what we want you to use to explain the decision-making style at Google. Which concept from chapter 3 do you believe applies to Google? And then you can explain why. Now, some students make the mistake of saying Google makes decisions by having a weekly meeting on Wednesdays with the top 3 executives. That's true, but that's not a concept. That's the information in the article. So I don't want you to repeat back to me the information that's in the article. I want you to take the information that's in the article and tell me what concept from the chapter that applies to it. So I want you to actually link what's in the article to a specific concept and then tell me, I believe they use naturalistic decision making, if that's what you think, and the reason why from the article you think that particular concept applies. So you need to be giving me some concepts from the chapter, not just repeating things that are in the article to answer that question. Second question is, in general, how does decision making in small companies differ from decision making in large companies? So again, this is your thoughts, but I want you to take concepts from the chapter that you believe apply to a small company versus a large company. I want specific information, concepts, terminologies, theories from chapter 3 that we learned about decision making, and explain why you believe that applies to a large or small company. Okay, so then after you've learned all about decision making in chapter 3, you're going to move on to chapter 4. And in chapter 4 is where we get started talking about motivation. There's a lot to motivation, and we'll actually talk more about it in another chapter. But this foundation of motivation in chapter 4 explains to you the difference between intrinsic and extrinsic motivators. Intrinsic motivators are your inner influences that cause you to act. These are your personal beliefs, your values, your personal goals and expectations. Those are things within you that cause you to be motivated. Extrinsic motivators are external influences that cause a person to act. So this includes possible rewards, punishments, benefits, pay. These are things outside of yourself that will cause you to be motivated to do a particular job. So you're going to learn about motivation. There's also a section in chapter 4 about money, which is the universal motivator. But even though money is a universal motivator, you're going to understand why through the needs hierarchy, it does require more than that to motivate most people. You're going to also read more about the internal and external locus of control. We talked about that some in the personality chapter previously last week. We're going to read more about how your internal locus of control also relates to your personal motivation. Remember, locus of control has to do with how much you feel your personal actions control your destiny. So you're going to read also about, like I said, the needs hierarchy, the need for achievement, need for power, need for affiliation. These are all things under McClellan's theory that relate to your level of motivation. So once you get through that chapter, chapter 4, you have a second half of your assignment. The second half of the assignment, you're going to read about this company called Hiscox on page 117. And then you're going to answer the three questions, and it asks you to first of all identify the intrinsic motivators at Hiscox. So within this article there is something that explains to you a personal belief or value of the employees that causes them to act. So that would be their intrinsic motivator. Then number two asks you what to identify the extrinsic motivators at Hiscox. So within the article, there are some items discussed that are motivational items that are external, things that Hiscox is providing to the employees, and that causes them to be motivated. Then it also asks you, and the third question, why opportunity for career growth is such a powerful motivator. So we want you to look through the chapter, through the reading that you've done, whether it be related to needs hierarchy or beliefs or expectations, but explain why career opportunity can be such a good motivator for people using the theories and concepts from the chapter. So you've got your discussion this week, you've got your reading this week, and then your assignments based on chapters 3 and 4. Keep in mind that we have some great additional learning resources here that you can complete on your iPad. And you've got practice quizzes. There is going to be 3 quizzes throughout this course, the first one being in week 4. So if you want to get started practicing on that, use your iPad to do the practice quizzes from the textbook publisher. And then you've also got some tools specific to this week that will help you learn more about motivation as well as your decision making style. So yeah, certainly complete those to enhance your discussion and discuss your results in the discussion area. So that is your overview of the week 2 requirements. If you have any questions, you can always contact me. My information is in the instructor area. And I will also be talking with you in the discussion myself. So I encourage you to get started as early as possible on the assignment, so you have plenty of time to have great discussion, and have a great week. Thanks.